Now let's talk about big tech. It's going nuclear. And before you wonder, no, they're not building bombs. Silicon Valley is instead courting nuclear energy to power its pet project, artificial intelligence.
Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us. You guys have been sending in some seriously interesting stuff lately, and we are so here for it. This time, we're taking a deep dive into, well, AI. But hold on, it's not just about the cool new stuff it can do. We're talking about the energy it takes to make all that magic happen. And you guys sent some articles and even a video report that really got us thinking. AI and nuclear power. What's the connection? Well, let's dive in and find out.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, right? AI is growing so fast, and everyone's talking about clean energy these days, so it's kind of inevitable that they'd end up on a collision course.
Yeah.
And trust me, it brings up some seriously big questions we need to be asking.
Okay, so one of the things that really blew my mind was this whole thing about how much power ChatGPT uses. Like, are you ready for this? Running ChatGPT for a year uses the same amount of electricity as it takes to power all of New Zealand for 3 months. That just kind of throws your brain for a loop, doesn't it? I mean, this isn't just about our phones staying charged anymore, right?
Right.
We're talking about these massive data centers using up crazy amounts of power.
You got it. The amount of energy AI needs is a huge deal, and it's only going to get bigger from here. Just imagine, in the U.S. alone, those data centers could go from using 4% of the country's electricity to almost 10% by 2030. And that's just to keep up with how fast AI is growing. So yeah, if you're worried about climate change and making things more sustainable, this is something you got to pay attention to.
Whoa, 4% to almost 10%. That's a massive jump. It makes you stop and think, why does AI need so much energy to run in the first place?
Well, at its core, AI needs a ton of computing power to do its thing. Think about it. Every little thing it does, understanding information, spotting patterns, writing text, creating images, all of that eats up a huge amount of energy. And as those AI models get even more complex, those energy demands just skyrocket.
It's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it, right? Like all these big tech companies are saying they're going green, but then they're pouring resources into AI, which needs a ton of energy.
Yeah, it's a tough one to balance for sure. Remember that video report you sent about this? It said that even though Microsoft and Google are both trying to become carbon neutral, their emissions have actually gone way up since 2020.
Yeah, I remember that. It was kind of shocking to see those numbers. Didn't it say Microsoft's emissions went up by something like 40% and Google's by almost 50%?
Yeah, you're right. It was a big jump for both of them. And it just goes to show you how urgent it is to find green and sustainable ways to power all this AI tech.
Which brings us to probably the most unexpected plot twist in this whole story, using nuclear power to run AI.
You're telling me it's not exactly the first thing you think of, is it?
Right. Like when you say nuclear power, most people probably think of, I don't know, Chernobyl or some sci-fi movie where everything melts down.
Yeah, those images definitely stick with you. But the thing is, nuclear technology has come a long way since then. That video you sent mentioned something called small modular reactors, or SMRs for short. They're basically a whole new take on nuclear power that tries to deal with the problems of those older reactors.
Okay, this is where I wish I paid more attention in science class. What exactly are SMRs and what makes them so different?
So basically, SMRs are way smaller than those giant nuclear reactors we're used to seeing. That's where the modular part comes in. They're designed to be built in a factory and shipped out in pieces, which makes them cheaper and faster to build. But the really cool part is that a lot of them have these things called passive safety features.
Passive safety features. Okay, that definitely sounds like a good thing.
It is. They basically use natural forces like gravity and convection to keep the reactor core cool if something goes wrong, instead of relying on pumps and outside power. So it makes them safer and less likely to have a meltdown like the old ones.
Makes sense. So how does this all tie back into the whole AI energy problem?
Well, even with the older reactors, one of the big selling points of nuclear power was that it could generate a ton of energy really reliably. Unlike solar and wind power, which depend on the weather, nuclear plants can just keep churning out power no matter what.
So it seems like it could be a solution, but I bet it comes with its own set of challenges, right? The video mentioned that in the US, we've actually been shutting down more nuclear plants than we've been building lately. What's the deal with that?
Right, so when they shut down a nuclear reactor, they call it decommissioning. It's a whole big process where they have to take it apart super carefully and make sure it's safe. It's really expensive and time-consuming, which just goes to show you that nuclear power is a long-term commitment. It's not just about building them, it's about taking care of them for their whole lifespan and then shutting them down safely when the time comes.
Sounds like even with these new reactors, there's still a lot of baggage that comes with nuclear power. It makes you wonder if the big tech companies can actually convince people that these SMRs are the way to go, especially with all the bad history.
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
So where does that leave us? It feels like we're standing at this crossroads, right? The future of AI might actually be tied to this energy source that still kind of freaks everyone out.
We're definitely at a turning point, that's for sure. The choices that get made in the next few years, and not just by the big tech companies, but by governments and even everyday people, those choices are going to shape AI and energy as we know it.
So what are the big questions we should be asking ourselves as we're going down this road? What do we need to figure out?
Well, for starters, can these big tech companies actually change how people feel about nuclear power? Like, can they really convince people that these SMRs, with all those fancy safety features, are actually a good idea? Because let's be real, it's going to be tough to make this work if people don't want it.
Especially with everything that's happened in the past, right? Like you said, Chernobyl, those images stick with people.
Yeah.
How do you erase all that fear and mistrust that's built up over decades?
It's a huge challenge, no doubt. And it's not just about how people feel. There's a ton of regulations around nuclear power, too. I mean, it's one of those regulated industries out there, and for good reason.
Mm-hmm.
But all those rules, while they keep everyone safe, they can also make it a lot harder to try new things and actually build these reactors.
So finding that middle ground is going to be key. But okay, let's say for a minute that they do pull it off. Big tech convinces everyone, the regulations get sorted out, all of it. What would a future powered by nuclear AI actually look like?
Now, that's a question that'll get your imagination going.
Mm.
Remember that Dominion Energy spokesperson from the video? They were talking about getting to 100% clean electricity by 2035. Well, if nuclear power takes over as the main energy source for AI, it could completely change how we get our power. We could see a huge wave of investment in these SMRs, like everyone suddenly wants to build them, and that could lead to a whole new era of clean energy breakthroughs.
It's like AI needing all this power could actually be the thing that forces us to create a cleaner energy grid, right? Like a domino effect.
You got it. And
Yeah.
that could be huge, not just for cutting down on emissions, but for energy independence and security, too. We wouldn't have to rely on other countries for energy anymore.
This deep dive has really given me a lot to chew on, that's for sure. I started out wondering just how much power AI needs, and now I'm picturing a future where it helps us fix the climate crisis.
It's a wild ride, isn't it? It just goes to show you that sometimes the most unexpected connections can lead to the biggest breakthroughs.
No doubt. This has been a fascinating deep dive, folks. We've gone from AI's hunger for energy to the surprising comeback of nuclear power. But what do you think? Hit us up on social media and let us know your thoughts. Are you ready for a future where AI and nuclear power go hand in hand? Until next time, keep those questions coming and keep diving deep.